So welcome everyone. My name is Anita Thompson of Art Venture Workshops, and I'm delighted to be here this evening. This is sponsored by the Friends of the New Hope Solebury Library. So thank you to them and thank you to you for all showing up. We're going to be creating this colored pencil vibrant eagle drawing. So we're going to start off first using a pencil. We're going to be doing this very lightly. I'm going to be drawing it darker so that it shows up on Zoom, but when you're drawing it, it should be just light enough or just dark enough so that you can see it, but we don't want the pencil to shine through our colored pencil. So that's why we do it lighter. Okay, so starting off, I'm just going to add a little more light over here. And I'm also going to zoom in a bit. So throughout this process, I'll be zooming in on certain parts as we're working on them so that you're able to see up close what we are doing. A little closer, just adjusting the light. Okay. So, and if you have any questions, you can put those in the chat. Again, this is being recorded and you will receive the recording at some point. I will send this to New Hope Library by later on this evening. So we're going to start off on the right side of our page. So again, this is a half sheet of computer paper, or you can use a sheet of sketch paper that is approximately 8.5 inches down, 5.5 inches across. So it is a smaller drawing so that we are able to get creating all of the detail. So we're going to create the silhouette of our eagle. So as you can see, our eagle takes up most of the space of our drawing. So we're going to start here at the bottom left corner. And we're going to move our pencil over because we're going to make the curve of the eagle's body. And then we're going to go right into the beak. So here we are at the lower left corner here. We're going to move our pencil slightly over to the right, and we're going to start that curve. And that curve is going to go right upward toward our page, and then we're going to curve even more like this. We're going to go downward in order to create the hook of a nose of our beak. And it's very hooked. It's a lot more hooked than you think. As a matter of fact, I need to hook it a little more. So curve, downward, hook, and then back out. Like so. And basically, we're going to go up towards the right side of our page. Let me put a little more light on this. There we go. And we're just going to curve slightly outward, like so. So that is the shape or the silhouette of our eagle. Make that a little bit darker so you can see. So it looks like a little bit strange without adding in all the details, but now we're going to add in all of the details. Well, not all of them, but basically the drawn details. I'm just going to wait for everybody to catch up here. And then we're going to start with back down toward the beak. And basically we're going to be creating the line that starts from the beak and upward underneath the eye. So basically we're going to be creating sort of the bottom lip of the beak. So here we are right here, and we're going to be separating that line or that part of the beak, since it's already sort of drawn. So we're just going to go outward like this a little bit. And then we're going to go up. And we're going to kind of curve around about right there. And then right after that, we're going to be creating the round part of the beak or the corner of the mouth. And that is going to come back out towards our beak. So see what we did here? We made that separation. We then went back and created this part of around the area of the mouth. We've left it open a little bit. And then we're going to go back out with it. And we're going to go towards the beak again. This is the yellow portion of the top lip. And we're going to go to about right here on the beak. And from there, we're going to create the orange part of the beak, which is going to look a little something like this. So good to see everyone tonight. I'm just kind of scrolling through here. Okay. All right, so now we're going to continue onward here. And we're now going to come over here around the beak, and we're going to create this other portion that is going to be shaped like this. And as it goes upward, like so. And you know what? Let's make this a little bit thicker up here. So it's going to look a little more like that. And that goes right towards the top of our eagle's head. So as you can see here, I'm just realizing on mine, this part might be a little bit thick. So we will probably have to go back and like fix this a little bit, but let's now go towards the top of the head here. And also start to create the eye and everything else that's happening. So basically the curve that is going to start the eye underneath, all of that. And I'm realizing this may have to move back a little bit. So let's just lightly erase this in case we have to move it, which is why we make everything light, because we now want to start to create the underneath the eye area, or actually the curve where the eye is going to be going, which is going to start here. This is basically the hairline. And so we're going to very lightly just create sort of a shape like this to indicate the hairline. And that's going to continue going upward and out like so. So kind of like a curve. Here's the bump of where the eye is going to sit. So we are going to move this a little more to the left. So now we're going to take an eraser and just erase that for now so we can add the eye in here. And we're going to be moving this just a little to the left. But first we're going to create the eye. Okay. So now our eye area, our eye shape is going to come right underneath the brow here. And actually there's a shadow here. So let's pre-draw that shadow shape. So this is a shadow shape of which we're going to be using right above the eye. So for now, it's just going to look like a shape like that. And then we're going to start to draw the eyeball. So that shape is going to start about right here. And it's going to be a little bit pointy. So we're going to come out from under that shadow shape. Let me make this darker so you can see. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to start to go in closer now. So here we are making a pointed shape, and it's going to be a football shape, but it's going to be sort of big like this. And it's going to be encompassing another shadow as well. So we're going to go all the way kind of out like this. So it's sort of a big half circular area. So again, this is also the shadow shape, including the eyeball shape. So that's why it looks so big in comparison to the one on the left. All right, so now we're going to go inside the eye and we're going to create the shape for the eyeball. So we're going to come right underneath here toward this point and where the shadow shape of the eye is. So I'm just redrawing this just so you can see a little bit darker. Here's the shape we just created. And then that shape is just going to come down to the bottom like this. And once you do that, we're going to create a circular shape for the actual eyeball. And that shape is going to be about right here. Now we're going to go inside the eyeball one more time. And we're going to create the center part or semi-center part. And we're going to start right over here where the shadow shape is. So I'm just going to point my pencil right near it. And now we're going to make the shape for the inside of the eyeball. But that's all we're going to do. We'll come back later and create the actual colors that go in there. So this shape is a half round shape until we get over here, and then we're going to make it cut off like that for now. And then we're just going to leave this just the way it is for now. And then we're going to come back down toward the beak area. And we're going to create this bottom part of the beak to expand a little bit over to the left, because I misdirected you when I originally did it. So I apologize. And I'm going to make my camera go up one more time. And we're now going to come down here towards the beak. And we're going to come over here to the left with this bottom area. And we're going to draw this a little bit straighter. So let's erase this part here first. And I'm going to point right over here on where we're going. And we're going to draw this a little bit straighter. Like so. We're going to go up towards the eye, but it's going to kind of curve around. So we're not going to the eye, but we're curving towards it. So here's that shape. And because we changed that shape, we're going to change the shape of the middle portion of the beak. So right here, can erase that line? And now we're going to go a little bit closer with that shape toward the bottom that we just did here. So that's going to follow that shape. Straighten that out. Let me make that a little darker so you can see it. Like so. I'm going to make that hook just a little more hook-like. And that's also going to change this part of the beak as well. And then we're just going to now erase this final line of the body and just move that back as well. So I just erased the curve, and we now want to make that curve a little bit higher, like so. And we're going to go out again for the curve of the body towards the left corner. So it should look a little more like that. Now we have our general shape, and we're just about ready to start with our colored pencil. But I'd like you to now, what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on the left side here around the body, part of the curve of the body. I'm going to move a little over to the left so you can see the separations that are happening. And we're going to pre-draw those very lightly. So we're going to first come to the edge of the mouth over here. And we're just going to add a very light kind of section that's going to go like this. So again, all of these sections are light. You move this over so you can see it. So here it is, we start to curve, and you can kind of see that here. We're going to continue that with this line here. So we go back up towards the curve, or towards the mouth, I should say. And we're now going to come over here and create our next bumpy curve. Everything is curving to the left. These are the sections of color that we're going to be doing. So again, you want these to be light, because when we create our colored pencil, we're going to be making our colored pencils go this way, and we're going to make those lines of separation disappear. So now let's continue on. We're going to create another curve here. So right underneath the bottom beak area. We're now working towards going toward, or I should say the separation's going kind of towards us. It's curving and going downward. And then we're going to create one more that's at the edge over here. Turn around, curve a little bit. And we do have one more right at the edge of where we started. So actually we've got a really thin one here that's going to be a blue color, like so. I'm going to move this up closer just so you can now see all of those lines. Oops, excuse my little eraser crumbs there. We're just going to draw two more sections in the beak before we start, and then we are ready to start with our colored pencils. So if I can bring your attention down towards this section of the beak, we're going to be making a very light triangle shape like this. We have another one that's over here, but we're going to leave it for now. Okay, and so now we are ready to start with our colored pencils. And we're going to start inside the eye. So we're going to do the inside of the eye first. So the colors that you need are red, orange, yellow, brown, and black. So again, our colors that we need are 5, red, orange, yellow, brown, and black. And we're going to start off with our black. So for those that have not used colored pencils before, we do this in a light layering upon layering. So we're going to treat the black as sort of an underlayer right now. So we want to tread very lightly with the black. So I'm going to move these other colors over for now. I'm also going to go closer in so that we're now zooming in to make sure you can see what we're doing. All the detail work. I'm just going to erase a little bit better on here so that you can't see as much of the lines. And then right before we start, I want to ask that you lighten up your lines using your eraser. So I have a kneaded eraser, which is this gray thing that you see. It kind of looks like a piece of clay. And I'm just lightening up my lines before we start. So that just means going over each of the lines and making them lighter so that when we start creating with our colored pencils, you don't see any of the pencil lines. I went a little dark on this one, so I'm going to use my other eraser. And now we can get started. And so, like I mentioned, we are going to start off with the black, and we are starting in the eye area. So we're going to outline the entire eye shape using our black colored pencil. We're also going to continue that into the shadow shape, which is over here. And we're also going to now take a moment to also outline that shadow shape, which is right above the eye. It's the part that is almost looks like an eyebrow. When you're ready with that, you're going to lightly shade in or kind of medium shade in the part above the eye, that shadow shape. So again, this is our first layer. This is using black. You're going to shade that in. And the other thing before we start is going to be putting down our black for a second and picking up our brown. The reason why is we're going to go into this part of the eye and create the first highlight. And we do that with brown. So we're going to come here right to the edge, and we're just going to create sort of a an oval shape. I'm going to make this a little darker. Kind of like a ovally football shape. Can you see that? I'm pointing to that, and that is with our brown. And after you've done that, you're going to move aside your brown. And you're then going to use your black because we're going to create the second highlight, which is inside the black area of the eyeball. Sort of right up against our shadow shape here. And we're going to create what's going to look like a bit of a half circle, like so. Once you do that, we're going to now go inside this circle. And basically what's going to happen is we're now going to create another shape using this black so that we are able to shade. So inside this area, we're going to create one more shape. Basically, we're going to take our black and kind of make a half circle and then go outward like this. So here is what I just created, that shape inside. And the reason why is because we are going to shade inside here using our black. So now that you've created that shape, we're going to lightly shade in this whole shape. We're going to make sure that we go around our highlight. And we're going to stay within this shape. So again, this is just our first shading. So we're going to create that shape. It's not real black yet. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to continue with this black, and we're going to create some curved lines inside the rest of the shape that are going to look a little bit like this. So I'm pointing to those shapes that we just created. See, they look like that. And then we're going to now very lightly shade in that area. So it should look like this. So it's going to look like a gray. Go a little bit closer here so you can see what we're doing. Now, we're now going to go outside of the eye right here. And this whole area underneath, we're also going to shade sort of a medium gray. And you're probably wondering, why are we doing all these different gray areas? This is sort of our under shading as we add color on top. So that's going to look a bit like this. While we have the black in our hand, we're going to come over here towards this section and we're going to start to make some hairs, or I should say actually fur, more fur. I always call fur hairs, and I have to stop doing that. So we're still continuing using our black. Right now, we are using our black right now in everything. So now we're going to come over to the right side and we're going to start making these light hairs starting over here. So we're making hairs. Like here's one. We're going to make a few over here. And these are just light hairs. And you can see that I'm starting the hairs over here. And then we're going to continue as we go to the left. We're going to make those hairs closer together. And then we're going to shade right to the right, like so. And again, this is just a light to medium gray for now. And then we can do some lighter shading right next to it. So again, this is just, it's almost like we're doing charcoal right now. The next step, continuing with our black, is we're going to head down to this triangular area. And we're going to outline it and just shade very lightly inside. Next step is we're now going to continue towards the beak. And right under here, we're going to make sort of a curved triangle. And we're going to shade that section in. So again, right now, we're just setting ourselves up for some of these kind of darker areas. And I'm going to lift up my camera so that you're able to kind of see the whole thing. Because now we're going to start adding some dark underneath this section. And those are going to be hairs as well. So this is, again, still with our black, we're going to start adding some kind of curved hairs or fur. See, I'm always calling it hair. We're going to add some curved areas of fur. Some of it gets a little shorter and closer together over here. And you can create that by doing a little bit of shading on top of where it's hitting right underneath the mouth. We're going to continue with this black. And right where we left off over here, we're going to now start to create some light feathery, kind of a light feathery line. So what I mean is we're going to start back over here. We're going to move our pencil slightly to the right. And I'm going to kind of show you. So we're going to lightly create some more fur here. And then we're going to go inward toward the eye, right underneath the eye. And we're going to create some more hair that's going to kind of go into a point toward this part of the eye. So this is, again, with our black colored pencil, and we're using fur-like strokes to go towards the point over here. You may have to go back over some of those strokes again, but you want to keep it light. We're just trying to kind of get some under shading using our black, and we're going to come back over toward the left and add some more black again. So here we are with our black colored pencil still. We're now going to make some of those first strokes a little bit bigger. So if you watch my hand, I'm going to you're kind of going in this direction, starting back under here. And we're just going to create some really light, kind of feathery black strokes. So you can see how light that is, right? We're just kind of creating those, and you can expand a little bit toward the top left corner. And we can even have some that are coming out under here, like so, and kind of going downward into this area. So we're just kind of creating some of those light feathery strokes. And then we're finally going to come right underneath the chin area. But we're going to come underneath here, and we're going to go in just a little bit, one space here. So here we are, this space here. And basically coming over here, we're going to lightly shade with our black. So here we are shading with our black underneath this area. And you're going to go around and start to create some texture with your strokes. See what I'm doing? Doing individual light strokes. Let me show this up close. We start off with shading, and then as we go around, we're going to go down the rest of the body. If you need to move your paper around, like rotate it like this, if it's easier for you to create those strokes, you can do that. These are very light strokes. We have one more section on the beak that we're going to use our black on. And then we're going to go up into the eye and finish off some of the eye with a little bit darker of the black. And then we finally start to add all of these vibrant colors. So please join me toward the beak again, toward the hook area. And we're just going to create a very light shaded area like so. And you're then going to go down to the bottom and make it really lightly shaded as we get into the point of that beak. And the final part is we're going to do some very light shading using our black on the edge of the outside. So I'm going to show this again up close just so you can see the shading on that beak. Okay. So now please join me as we go back to the eye. still using our black. And we're now going to go into this bottom area of the eye. So what we're going to do is, first we're going to shade here in the corner up here. And the way we're going to shade it is, we're going to create another section right underneath where we added the brown kind of oval. And we're going to add another section. You see how I pointed this out? And the reason we're doing that is because we're going to start shading inside this area using the black, but we're going to create some shading so that we're also going to be adding orange and yellow to the rest of the eyeball. So here we are using the black. We came over here in the corner and made it sort of a pointy area here with our shading. We're going underneath the eyeball, but staying at the bottom of the actual eyeball with that shading. And then we're finally going to come back over toward the left side to shade a little more and also shade a little bit thicker of an area underneath, or I should say around the eyeball. So it's going to kind of look like this. We have one more shaded section that we're going to create over here in the bottom right. And that is going to be sort of like a line right here. And then we're going to put our black down for right now. And we're going to grab our yellow. Now we're going to go into the spots of the eye that we did not color. And we're going to color those spots yellow. So if you take a look, if you're a little confused, take a look up and you can see I'm going around the parts that are not black or dark gray. I'm coloring those and also getting into sort of the whole eye area section. And then you do want to go a little bit onto the section where we created those lines. And I'm going to go in again really close. And while we have this yellow, we're now going to add yellow to the overall eagle. So let's lift up. We're going to get into the top area here and shade. And so what we're doing now is we're going to create strokes of shading. So I'm going to show that up close. So do you see how I created that yellow? And we're really thinking about the fur and how the fur would be going. So the yellow is going to extend upward. I'm going to make this a little darker so you can see. And also I'm going to go really close. So we've got yellow here and yellow right up against the edge here of the eye. Oops, let me move this down so you can see me coloring. And you can make that nice and vibrant. So This part, we don't have to worry about layering the colors as much. And so adding the yellow throughout this area kind of shading and then also creating individual curved lines for, I'm going to move my light so you can see the yellow a little better. There we go. Because the yellow doesn't show up as much. Basically, we're adding the yellow up in the top area of the head. And I'm going back and forth with my strokes, curving around. And I'm just going to show that now up close so you can see those curved strokes of yellow. And we're going to continue with the yellow throughout the rest. So meaning we're now going to go into the left side underneath, all in this area. And we're going to shade a vibrant yellow. So we're not doing strokes in this area. We're actually shading yellow as our first layer of color. And I'm going to lift up a little bit. So here we are shading vibrantly using our yellow. And it's all going to be in the entire section underneath his chin. So I'm saying chin, I really shouldn't say chin. It's not his chin. It's under the left side of his, below the eye, way below the eye. So we're going here to in the fur. I like to make that yellow extend and get a little lighter as it goes toward the top right corner. But you can lightly shade in order to make it look like it's getting lighter. So there's a lot of yellow in this section. And then, of course, we start to layer our other colors. And it gets vibrant again right over here. So hopefully you can see this color change. And I should probably also say for some of the people that are newer on here that have joined us this evening, if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, it's okay. In my classes, I encourage you to get creative and make it your own. So if you don't want the yellow to be more vibrant, or maybe you don't even want to add as much yellow, that's okay too. So here we are with the yellow, and we are going to continue in the rest of the body, but we're going to go lighter in this next section. This is going to be an under layer of yellow, of shaded yellow. This is the one section that's separated. As we start to get into our sections here that we've created with our pencil. Everything kind of has a yellow undertone. We're now going to continue that even lighter through the rest of the fur here underneath. So this is just sort of a light shading of yellow over top everything for now, over top all of the sections. Before we start to add all of our colors. And just take your time. So we're also now going to continue into the mouth area. So we're going to add some vibrant yellow on the first part of the beak on the bottom here. So all across here. Also coloring over the black that we lightly added. You're going to add another section right above using your yellow as if you're creating the top lip area or mouth area. And that's going to go right into our pointy beak. So again, this yellow that we're using is now, add some light here so you can see. We're now going to be going into our beak area over the entire part with our yellow. Now this part doesn't have to be as vibrant because this is going to be our under layer before we add our orange. And you're going to also go into the next section with the yellow, lightly shading. So again, everything, this is our sort of our yellow kind of under portion. And then we're finally going to add some more yellow right underneath the eye, like outside of the eyeball. And for now, this doesn't have to look like fur. We just want to add some very light yellow to this whole section. And we're going to continue that towards the bottom beak. This is a very light yellow. So it's light shading. It doesn't have to be even as far as your coloring because we want it to look textured for the fur because we are going to go back and start layering in other colors. So I'm just going to show this up close just so you can see the varying degrees of the yellow. And when you're ready, we're going to now put our yellow down and grab our orange. And we're going to go back up into the eye. And we're now going to color over the black sections of the eyeball with our orange. And you're probably thinking, what? Very strange, right? So first we're going around the outside and going right on top of the black using our orange. So all around where you see black, same with the around the eyeball. And you're even going to go inside the black, finally the black shadow above the eye. We're just giving it a little hint of orange there before we're going to really turn this dark. And then when you're ready, right underneath the eye at the top, you're going to add some shaded orange toward the point. And we're going to be continuing with this orange around the bottom of the eye, right in this section. And we're going to start adding some orange strokes of fur underneath. And you can start to get more vibrant with your strokes. And I'm going to now go a little closer so that you can see. So we're now working with our orange. Trying to kind of get a fiery orange color on the outside here. And we're going to continue working with that orange now. Once we have a color, we continue to work with it in different sections. So we're now going to start layering on top of our yellow underneath the fur of where the eye is. And we're now layering orange and making it quite vibrant. We do that by pressing as we're coloring on each area and then extending our coloring into strokes by making our lines go outward. Like we're using a pencil, we're just drawing with colored pencil here. And then you can sort of shade a little bit. So we're now making lots of vibrant orange as we're now starting to layer the fur, moving towards the left side of our page here. So we're now concentrating on making some curves using our colored pencil. We're going to now continue with that colored pencil inside the black area going towards the bottom of the beak here and using that orange to color in on top of the black. And again, creating long strokes. Changing direction. So we should be having a lot of orange happening. We're gonna start to move upward into the rest of the head area, but first we want to hit the orange where our beak is. And that means outlining the middle section of the beak where it's separating, almost like if it were, it were smiling. We're going to outline this section using orange. And then right around the corner of where the two parts of the beak meet, we want to do a little bit of shading, especially toward the bottom of that beak, kind of like on the line and a little bit above it, and then going and doing that shading closer to where the beak is meeting, the bottom beak is meeting the top beak. So this again is with our orange. We're shading on top of our yellow. And that's also going to start to bring us into the top beak, where we're really going to make it vibrant with our shading using our orange. And if you take a look to see where I'm shading around the beak and leaving the middle section for now, the yellow. Remembering to get on the tip of the beak. Just work your way around. We are now shading a little bit darker using our orange. You want this to be a nice, vibrant orange. We're going to go in with some red as well and brown. But you can kind of outline a bit along the edges. And again, this is using our orange. And then we're kind of shading around and outlining and making it a vibrant orange. Oops, I just broke the tip off of my orange, so need to sharpen that. Okay, back in business. So if you notice, around the top area is darker with the orange. And when you're ready, after that is sufficiently dark enough, you're going to go in the middle in the yellow portion, and you're going to create light orange lines over the orange, or over the yellow, I'm sorry. And I'm going to show this up close just so you can see that shading. The way that I accomplish the part in the yellow is to then take the orange and shade, and also shade as if I'm creating separate lines. And that's how I created that shading. I'm going to go a little darker here. Okay. And then our final part down at the bottom here is just to make it a little darker orange, but again, using kind of back and forth strokes so that there's some texture. And again, I'm showing that up close, and I'm pointing to where we're shading with that orange. And then we're going to finally take some of that orange, when you're ready, using lines into the rest of these sections. First, starting with these two areas over the yellow. Individual orange lines in the section with the yellow. So it's these two sections. We're adding some orange. So we're layering all of this. We also need to come into this top section and create some orange, shaded orange, especially in this top area. And we're going to extend that into the black. So again, we're shading on top of our black using our orange. And you can start to make some individual orange hairs that are sticking out. And then shade a little more in a section on top of the yellow. A little more vibrantly. So we're going a little more vibrantly above the eye. So soft strokes, you know, using the orange all above the head here. We're creating the fur. This is setting us up for adding the final colors to make it vibrant. We have a little more orange to go through since we are moving down into the section around the beak again. But we wanted to add some of that orange on the head section. I'm just sharpening my pencil again, meaning my orange colored pencil, since we're continuing to use this orange. We're going to move back down towards this area. We're going to start to add some more shaded orange down here. You can do that by concentrating in this section, making it a little darker. And that's also going to bring us back down into this section that we need to add some more orange to using shading on top of the yellow. And you're also going to shade around the side here with the orange. You can lightly shade in the middle of the yellow if you like. I'm now going to get closer now that we are creating, working in the whole area. We're going to now come around this area where we don't have any coloring, and we're going to come up to the edge over here, and we're going to start to make these light strokes of fur using the orange. It's kind of curving inward, and I'm showing that up close. So the section that we're doing is this section. This is with orange. It's on top of the yellow. And we're now starting to create these fine lines so that it looks like fur. I'm going to go in really close now. And we're going to continue creating those lines. So the fur is lightly kind of curving. We're going in this whole section here, but starting with creating the hair in this area and moving towards the eye. So So for right now, we're just doing this with the orange. You can kind of see very light strokes using orange. And that is going to bring us into the area right underneath the eye, back into this area where we're also going to be creating some curved strokes. And the one in particular that's going to kind of make a curve right here, which later on we're going to go back in with the green. But it's going to now bring us back to the inside the eye with the orange, where we're now going to get much more vibrant. So we can finish off the eye. So now with our orange, we're going to come around this section and we're going to start creating. Well, first we're going to create, using our orange, we're going to go around and create these orange lines all around the area of the eyeball. These lines are going to continue throughout the whole section of the eyeball. So I'm going to show that up close. That's with our orange. Now, once you do that, we're going to come in this section using our orange, and we're going to make this pretty vibrant orange. So you just pressed on this section. Now we're going to start to do the same thing in the yellow portion at the bottom of the eye. We're now going to start shading at the bottom portion of the eyeball, but we're leaving the yellow on the right side at the bottom of the eye. We're also leaving yellow towards the black area of the eye. Basically, if you're confused, just take a look up to see where I'm kind of coloring. So again, this is with the orange. And when you're done, you're going to go back in with yellow to make it right in the spots that we created with the yellow, meaning it's sort of around the middle of the eyeball and then here along the edge. So you're going to come back in with yellow. Oh, and the highlight over here as well. So here are the three sections. The oval, going to point to that. This is with yellow. You're going to go over the yellow again in the area around the eyeball and on the outside. And then you're going to put your yellow down and you're going to pick up your red. And you're going to color on top of your orange. You're kind of going to shade it So you still want the orange to kind of show through, but we want it to be a fiery orange. So again, this is using your red. We're now creating a fiery kind of eye, eyeball. On top of the orange areas, all the orange areas. You want to get a little bit darker on the top portion of the eye. So again, that's with our red. And when you're finished with that, you're going to grab your black. And this is where we're going to start to get really dark in the eye as we're finishing off the eye. We are headed towards finishing our vibrant colored eagle. We're going in the middle of the black section of the eye, and we are now darkly coloring with the black. We started layering that black very lightly, and now we're going back and we're making it darker. So that also means not just the inside of the eye, the round part, the pupil part, but we're now going to go around and redo the black part of the eye sections, including the top part right above the eye, that shadow shape. Now, does the shadow shape have to be completely black? It doesn't. You can do a shaded black, making sure the previous colors that we used are still shining through. Remembering to also go around the outside of the eye using the black. And as we get to the corner here, you're going to lightly shade so that it's not just black, but you can see the other colors that we've used because you're shading lightly or lighter. You're going a little darker with the black, but at the same time, you're not going so hard that you want it to be completely black. And whenever you're finished with that part, you're then going to shade with using your black inside the eye area underneath where we created the pupil part, but you're going to shade on top of the orange using your black so that it is shaded with a light shading of black. And you're going to do that sort of around the rest of the eye. And then we're going to be using our final colors to finish off our very vibrant eagle. So that means we're going to be getting into our greens. So our next color is going to be our light green. And we're going to start on the top of the head. And now we are shading. So this is with our light green. And we are shading and also moving that shading in strips on the head. So if you can look and see, sometimes I'm making it look like fur, and then sometimes I shade in one section so that I'm really getting that green to come out, especially towards this section of the eye. I'm using this green now. You can kind of see that I'm shading on top of the yellow using the green. And I'm going underneath the eye area along the line that we created with the black. And I'm continuing that green towards the mouth. But as I do it, I'm going to do individual strokes. And end up towards the beak with individual green strokes. This is our light green. So we're using light green. And if we all have 5 more minutes, we can finish this up. I know we're running a little bit late because we started a little bit later, about 5 minutes later. But this is where we add our texture. So you can start to create shading with your green, and then also starting to go in a separate direction and create lines that are slanted. And I'm just going to kind of show that right here at the edge of the paper. I've taken my pencil, still, we're still using the green, and you can start making strokes of fur and also lines going in another direction. You can't go wrong with this in creating, all of these strokes of color. And we're also going to go into the bottom section using this green on top of the whole area. So we're just going to apply a light layer of this green in all of those sections. And then we're going to add some more colors to each individual section. But again, we add some of the green. We're using the light green, and we're also coloring, adding a little bit to the beak area, the above beak area. This is just with the light green. And when you're ready, we're going to get into our light blue. And we're again going to go to the top of the head. And we're going to start shading in some light blue areas. And you can start to make strokes of fur. Long wispy strokes if you like, shorter strokes. So again, this is where your creativity can take over. But we're now adding more color to the top of the head, layering the colors that we already have there. So again, you can kind of go back and forth in another direction, which is what I'm doing right now. So I'm almost taking it as if I'm making lines, separate lines on top of the head using the blue. It's also going to take me into adding more blue underneath. You know, you can have fun with it. Now it's time to kind of make the color flow. Don't be afraid to use all the color. We've layered in the other lighter colors, and now you can start to get more vibrant. And this is where you can start to change direction in each of the sections that we created underneath the beak. So I'm now just going in with the light blue over each section. We have the green and the yellow shining through. It's really vibrant. It's becoming our vibrant eagle. As you can see, as I'm creating this line work, my lines get smaller and closer together as we go towards underneath the beak. Again, this is with the light blue. Just have fun with it. And you can also create some line work right underneath the eye. Which will also look fur-like if you start to curve those lines. And then finally, you want to add some blue and purple underneath the section of the beak here. So there's a dark section here, and I add purple on all the sections, but then sometimes go individually in the sections. This is using purple, and you can also, oops, boy, my points keep breaking tonight. So I'm using purple now. Purple can be used in the darker sections, and you can then add black on top if you want to get it really dark, but you don't have to. So again, this is the purple. Like to also really go underneath the area where the beak is, but also on top of the fur where the underneath the mouth area is. And this is purple, and you can add some black if you like. which is what I had originally. Get it kind of dark under there. And this is where you can kind of start to do some outlining. Oops, let me move that. As we finish our final drawing here. I'm going to ask in about a minute or two if you're interested in sharing your drawing. Would love to see it. I even add some purple on the lower beak where we added the black. I like to add a little bit of purple because black is really a combination of, some darks. It makes your blacks more richer if you use a combination of colors instead of just black. So it's kind of nice. And then I'm also going to add some purple and blue to the darker areas on the head. So you're probably wondering also, well, we didn't use brown. Brown can also be used in the dark areas and also just as some added coloring underneath the beak in the darker section. You can even use it on the orange beak part itself if you want to get a little bit darker shading on the tip of your beak. So you can also use the brown there and to separate the smile area. And then we do want to add some little hairs coming out of the top part of the beak, and we do that using our brown as well. So I'm going to give another minute and then I want to see. Oh my goodness. All right. So I'm going to remove my spotlight, and you would all like to unmute and also show your work when you're ready. I'm going to stop the recording.